Reading 3 of Guru Nanak in India in the 50 Lives. The inclusion from the beginning of women within the Panth created a significant legacy. It is said that Guru Nanak's first followers was his elder sister, Nanaki, his sister, with whom he was close. So he's close to his sister. Sikh families were encouraged to educate their girls. They seemed very enlightened to the Sikhs, and in later centuries women were allowed to read from the scriptures during public worship. It is no surprise that today many Sikh women are confident professionals. It's like my lawyer from the corporate lawyer from Chicago was a Sikh woman with distinguished careers in public service. They've perhaps benefited from the relative equality that the religion encouraged for centuries. If the real and metaphorical dimensions of agrarian society and manual labor and the cycle of the seasons remained a hallmark of Nanak's verses, they also shaped his religious vision. Quote, liberation in Sikhism is to be obtained by living the life of a householder through marriage, through work. The writer and journalist Hartash Singh Bal says, in one story from the hagiographic tradition that captures the ethos, Nanak goes to a rich merchant's house to dine. When he looks at the man's hands, he notices they don't have calluses. So he says, this is not a house where I can eat. Kirat, karni, or working with your hands, remains one of the three basic tenets of Sikhism. The others are naam, japna, meditation on the names of the Supreme Being. Naam, japna, meditation. As embodied by the verses of Nanak and his successors, which were collected in a holy book called the Adi Granth, and Wand Chakrana, sharing some of your earnings through charitable giving. Paul says if anybody is to distill the message of Sikhism as it is known to most people in ordinary belief, these are its senses. Sikh identity did emerge fully formed from Nanak's mind, however. Like most religions, Sikhism we know today evolved by a long and gradual process, but because Sikhism is one of the newest of the major world religions with a rich trail of documentation, we can gain a relatively clear view of its evolution. Nanak was succeeded by 9 other gurus who, over 200 years, helped build and consolidate the Sikh faith. Over that time, the religion's differences from Islam and various strains of Hinduism sharpened, and confrontations with Muslim rulers and then Hindus grew more frequent. The last of the gurus in the line Guru Nanak founded was Gobind Singh, who shortly before his death in 1708, abolished the role of guru. After his sons were killed in the fight against the Mughals and their ruling agents, Gobind wished to foreclose later struggles for succession within his own religion. In the place of a human hierarchy, he set a book, the Guru Granth Sahib, a remarkable work assembled by an earlier guru, which in addition to the words of the gurus compiled in the Adi Granth contains verses by Kabir and other saints, as well as Sufi text. From then on, this has been the religion's supreme guide. Yet Gobind Singh's more radical innovation was to create the Khalsa, Brotherhood of Initiates. His father had been executed at Delhi's Chandni Chowk by Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb for his refusal to give up his faith, and battled against the Mughals and the regional military chiefs, many of them Hindu Rajas. Gobind Singh saw a need for Sikhs to organize better, to defend themselves. Henceforth, the traditions of martial action and martyrdom became important within Sikhism. In 1705, Gobind Singh composed a letter to Aurangzeb, Zafarnama, which contains these lines resonant across the history of the Sikhs. When all has been tried, yet justice is not in sight, it is then right to pick up the sword, and it is then right to fight. Now they say Gobind Singh is a guru and an avatar, which means he defends the rights of people on earth. The Khalsa, he changes history. The Khalsa would be that band of men dedicated to defending the religion. Membership was marked by 5 outward symbols called the 5 Ks, which are still embraced and worn by many Sikhs today. The kesh, long hair, the kangha, the small wooden comb, the kirpan, the curved dagger, the kara, the metal bracelet, and the kacchaa, pair of loose breeches. According to Hartosh Singh Bal, these 5, along with the unspoken 6th, form 3 pairs, the symbolizing power and restraint. Guru Nanak. Gobind Singh says we'll have to think of these in terms of polar opposites. Bal says, hair in the Indian tradition, unshorn hair, loose hair, is a sign of spiritual power. The comb is a polar opposite, that is, spiritual power must be under a certain discipline. The kirpan is a sign of physical power. The kara is a symbol of restraint on this. And the 5th symbol obviously goes with the unsaid idea of sexual power, tantric power, with the kacchaa as a symbol of restraint. Fifth symbol. Kacchaa. Kacchaa. With the metal bracelet is some tantric power. I don't know. So these three great forces of power in the Indian tradition must be harnessed in Sikhism, but they must be harnessed with restraint, the sense of restraint and control. To other Indians, perhaps the most problematic dimensions of Sikh identity has been the claim that the Sikhs constitute their own Qawm, a term broadly meaning nation, which is often translated as people who stand together. The urge among some Sikhs to establish the Panth as a nation, conceived in modern terms, goes back to 1940. It was in part a reaction to the demand for the creation of Pakistan as a homeland for the subcontinent's Muslims. Partition of the sixth continent was in many ways most brutally felt in the Punjab. This is like current news. There's the issue of Kashmir. The region slit and torn by end of empire map making. It's all the British's fault. They don't know how to leave a place. Look at Brexit. They don't know how to leave anything. It created a large Sikh refuge population, many of whom fled for safety to Delhi, and the bright embers of a demand for a separate Sikh homeland, Khalistan. Wow. Interesting. It's getting very political. In the 1980s, these embers were stoked into furious violence by radical young Sikh preachers of supportive diaspora and the subversion of democratic politics in the Punjab by the India's leadership in Delhi. In 1984, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered an assault on the Golden Temple at Amritsar, the site of the most important Sikh symbols of spiritual and temporal authority, which had become a fortified redoubt of Sikh militancy. 5 months later, she was gunned down by her own Sikh bodyguards. Days of anti-Sikh massacres in the capital followed, in which more than 3,000 Sikhs were estimated to have been killed. The perpetuators of these massacres were never tried under the Indian justice system, and it took several years more of military repression before the Sikh secessionists were defeated. So deep was Sikh disaffection that it seemed hard to imagine their reintegration. Yet barely 20 years later, India had a Sikh Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh. It isn't to suggest an easy story of acceptance and reconciliation. Martyrdom is a current that runs deep in the Sikh tradition, as does a powerful sense of justice. But there's also the recognition of needing to return from the mountain realms of sages and purest visions to live down here in the world. We are reading from Guru Nanak, and we completed part 3 of Incarnations, History of India in 52 Lives. 50 lives.